There's nothing more frustrating than getting called into the office or getting in trouble because you're being non-defiant or insubordinate. Good evening and welcome to Give Me a Break. I'm Jonathan Carmody. Insubordination means a failure to comply with a reasonable request. We first focused in on this in our very first season, and that's going to be part of tonight's second look, because insubordination always happens in every school situation. Tonight, we're going to show you some examples of insubordination. When I like to tell you what it means, we're also going to be telling you what you can do to not be insubordinate. In fact, there's another word for it called subordinate, which means you're doing what you're told. Here's one of the first examples. We all know that insubordination can happen in any school. It can also happen in the workplace. Let's take a look at a student who is insubordinate, but he doesn't know what insubordination means.
What's up, dog?
What did you say?
What's up, dog?
No. You know better than that. How do you properly address someone?
Sorry, Mr. Ritt.
Okay. Anthony's been disrespectful to his substitute teacher. You seem to be on a regular basis in my office. Just this month, we have a series of disrespect, skipping class, insubordination.
What's insubordination? I don't know what that means.
What do you think it means, Anthony?
I have no idea. Someone's submarine?
As many times as Anthony's been in the office, it comes to me as a shock that he doesn't know what insubordination means. You're not following instructions. You're not following directives. Your teacher sent you down on a referral because you were rude.
It wasn't a teacher, though. It was just a substitute.
Excuse me?
It's not like it was my real teacher. Subs don't know what's going on. They're not even real teachers. They just sit there and do nothing. She's not even teaching the class. She doesn't know what she's doing.
She does qualify to be a teacher.
Yeah, well, she's not teaching. She's just like chilling behind her desk.
Anthony, this is your fifth referral and have not been successful with our standard methods of discipline. Tried detentions, tried student conferences. Your mom has me on speed dial. With this one, it's going to be a one-day suspension.
No.
It'll be Friday.
On Friday? I can't do Friday. I got a qualifier for the Nationwide Tour. I'm a very big golfer, and on Friday, they have a qualifier for the Nationwide Tour. And I'm a little worried that I'm not going to be able to go. That's not fair, because this is my big shot to actually do something and do what I want to do in life.
I don't have a choice here. You've backed yourself into a corner.
The tour's not going to look at that, though.
This is not about the tour. This is about respect. You need to show respect. Period. I'll see you after your suspensions.
I'm pretty pissed off because I got suspended and now I can't go to the Nationwide Tour. So it's pretty upsetting. Thanks for nothing.
Anthony needs to learn to respect his elders, and to get that respect back, he's going to have to give it first.
That's right. Now let's look at why he was insubordinate. It was because he refused to listen to his substitute teacher. Now, really though, you gotta listen and do what you're told, because those teachers, these teachers teach good. Meaning these teachers have all these teachers deserve respect because we pay them with our tax dollars. If you're thinking to yourself, you don't want to listen to your teacher, well, these teachers do have a right to call your mom or dad and tell them what you've been up to. So does it matter? Yes. Does it affect everybody? It does. And look, I get you don't want to listen to your teacher. But if you don't respect your parents, because really, in the real world, you need to listen to your boss. And if you don't listen to your boss, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. What does that mean? You're going to be fired. You're going to be written up, because insubordination also happens in the workplace. Meaning, no, I'm not going to do. It's like saying you told you told your boss that no, you're not going to do what he or she has directed you to do. That's insubordination. And not only does it happen in school, it also happens in the workplace. So that's what the factor is. When you're subordinate, you're doing what you're told. When you don't do what you're told, then it becomes to where you don't want to be in the way. So how do we fix it? We'll get to that later, but I'm going to be pointing this out as we address some common sense here. Don't ever be telling a teacher, no, I cannot. Because that's straight insubordination. Don't be insubordinate, be subordinate. It's always good to be very subordinate. Still ahead, the sweetheart swindle. What you can do what you can do if you're a victim of the sweetheart swindle from elderly people. And one person is working with Dateline to test you out. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're taking a second look into insubordination. Insubordination means a failure to comply with a reasonable request. So far we looked at one example, let's take a look at another example. Now this guy was written up for being insubordinate because he refused to listen to the teacher. Take a look at this.
Justin, I have a discipline notice here from Miss Green's class from yesterday.
I've been in Mr. Halter's office a couple times. It's not that big a deal for me anymore.
And tell me the whole story as you saw it.
I was sitting at the table and Miss Green said, what are you doing, Justin? I said, sitting here right now. And she said, well, you need to be doing something. I told her that I left my books in my truck. I think she said, that's your problem, or that's not my problem, or something like that.
Did you ask to go get them?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Justin's a senior. We've rode this horse across many creeks, and no one in there heard you ask to go to your truck to get your stuff. Nobody. You told the teacher that no, you weren't going to do what she had directed you to do. What this is considered is insubordination.
But I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, and I was cranky. I don't think straight when I'm just...
Hey, Justin, I get up every morning and I have problems thinking just like everybody else, but now there's certain things we have to do and certain things we can't do. Looking in your file, you've had one offense already. Our punishment for the second offense is 5 days in-school suspension.
I'm not looking forward to in-school suspension one bit. The sooner I get out of there, the better.
Thanks, son.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I don't believe Justin will be insubordinate again, but at some point, if he chooses to continue to do this, that kettle's going to get too hot to hold.
It's your hole in that kettle. Now, if you keep on holding that kettle for too long, it's going to get hot. Alright. There are a total of 4 of these principal office videos talking about insubordination. But what I want to do is get to the horse's mouth here. So what I want to do for you is show you some examples. You might be saying, well, did you always show some examples from the principal's office? Yes, but I want to show you some other examples in actual school. And one of those came from a video. This video right here. So, we're going to mute the music. Because I didn't want to get copyrighted. And because this shows a good example of insubordination, how it's played out. Take a look at this.
Hey man, we gotta take the headphones off. Take the headphones off. Take them off. What? principal. Man, call. Security guard will call up security. We have a student up here who's being non-compliant. We need some backup here. Come on, let's go. Go see Mr. Hall, man. Let's go. Oh, man, I need to pull up. All this attitude. We gotta play some people with attitudes like that. All right. He's gonna take care of that.
And that is a great example of insubordination.
What?
Insubordination.
What's insubordination?
Well, insubordination is a failure to comply with a reasonable request.
Well, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, give some examples. Okay, well, watch these few short clips.
Raymond, can you please get back to your appropriate seat? Raymond, please get in your correct seat. Warning, I am going to write you up for insubordination.
Madeline Atwell, no eating in the computer lab, please. Yo, Miss Atwell, please put your food away. This is ridiculous. Seriously? I have to walk over and bring this over to you? Come on. Thank you.
Wow, those are really good examples of what insubordination is. Well, yeah, insubordination is awesome. Maddie? Maddie? Maddie. Oh, yeah. So, how do we be subordinate? Well, first, follow directions, be respectful, and know that you're responsible for your own actions. Thanks for watching!
That's common sense. Be respectful, be responsible, and don't be respectful. Follow directions, and know you're responsible for your own actions, you know? It's in the workplace. The bottom line here is this. Insubordination not only happens here in the workplace, it also happens in our schools. And trying to teach you that if you're insubordinate at your work, you're going to end up getting fired. Alright, switching gears now. Next, the Sweetheart Swindle. You're going to go undercover as we're about to show you a group of family members who are scamming elderly men out of their dignity and taking advantage of them. Now, these people have been sued. Before. But now, one of those is actually working with Dateline. Chris Hansen has the details, has our second look. Please stay with us. We get old. We fall in love, we get old, and we're about to die. But not before somebody takes advantage of us some elderly people, and we give up we give them our money. We give the scammers their money. We're talking about the Sweetheart Swindle. It's a scam that you probably never heard of before. As we first showed you last season, this is a scam unlike any other that targets the elderly people and steals the money, not only takes advantage of the elderly, but they steal their money. It's all about what you're about to see in a hidden camera investigation. Here's Chris Hansen with our second look.
Why didn't you make me one of your victims when I loved you so?
They are lonely, isolated in many instances, and it just puts them in a situation where they're very vulnerable.
She wouldn't have done all this had she loved me.
They just build up a trust, and eventually that trust evolves into show me the money.
If it was all just a scam on her part, and she didn't care, that would hurt worse than anything else. And, to tell you the truth, the way it looks now, she probably did just exactly that.
Leave me if you need to.
Their stories are more tragic than even the lyrics suggest. Four lonely men who all have something in common. Victims, they say, of a crime of the heart. The story begins with an elderly widower. And it's not just a story of a love affair gone bad. His case is being investigated as a crime. 5 years ago, Harry Champion was a vigorous 80-year-old man who meticulously tended his home and garden. Then he suffered a stroke, which left him unable to care for himself. He had planned to spend the final years of his life in his home, where he lived first as a young man and then as a loving husband.
And the reason you had to get rid of that house?
Was on account of her.
She called herself Venus Milo. She was young and beautiful, and she told Harry that she loved him.
How do you feel when you look at that picture of Venus now?
Bad.
You once loved this woman.
Yeah.
Tried your best to take care of her. Spent every penny almost you ever had. What did you get in return?
Nothing.
And it's really about money. There's a sleazy side to this, in that these victims are so vulnerable, and there's nobody there to protect them.
Ray Alsdorf is an investigator for the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in Northern California. He's investigating over a dozen of these cases, known as the Sweetheart Swindle.
These women are incredibly convincing, and these gentlemen are very vulnerable. And it's the combination of those two factors that really allow these people to be so successful.
And as you'll see later through our hidden camera, some women are practiced at befriending and courting elderly men, like the woman who broke this man's heart.
I really fell in love with her. I think I loved her more than I ever loved my wife when I married her.
Mark Moyer met Lisa Loio 3 months after his wife of nearly 50 years had died. They married soon after.
So I asked her to marry me, and she just jumped up and down for joy. And gave me a big hug, and that's all I ever got from her was a big hug. Once in a while, she'd kiss me on the cheek.
At the time, 77-year-old Mark Moyer had money in the bank and a modest home in which to spend his twilight years. Now he lives in one small room and survives on Social Security and food stamps.
I guess it was about 18 or 19 months. She relieved me of a little over $200,000.
78-year-old Charles Hunt met Margaret Dimitro at a time when he needed a friend.
It had been just about a year from the time that Helen died when I met Margaret and Dimitro. I was lonely, very lonely at the time.
He borrowed $10,000. It says he gave the cash to Margaret, and he also ran up $6,500 on his credit cards. Ultimately, he filed for bankruptcy. Sam Kaplan fancied himself as the professor in My Fair Lady when he lent money to a struggling young woman.
You knew this woman 5 months, and you gave her $94,000?
Yes, stupid, I know. But I thought I was helping somebody at the time.
Together, these 4 men estimate they lost nearly $400,000, money they saved over a lifetime of hard work. And these are not isolated cases, but as experts say, a growing trend of abuse, not so much physical as financial. And often, the predators who target these elderly men leave them emotionally devastated, penniless, and alone.
It is truly an organized crime in every sense of the word.
John Nicholas is a deputy sheriff in Palm Beach County, Florida. He's also an American-born gypsy, one of the few in this country who has joined the ranks of law enforcement. He knows how the scam works because many of the women involved are gypsies.
This is a swindle that is perpetrated by people that know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
Not all sweetheart swindles are perpetrated by gypsies, and not all gypsies perpetrate the sweetheart swindle. But according to Nicholas, the women who do are professionals, and they bring special training to the job.
The ability to talk, the ability to con, and also if they are pretty attractive or fix themselves up to be more attractive, that helps obviously. To be able to perpetrate the con, and don't forget, Chris, that's all it is a con job, perpetrated on senior citizens.
And they are easy marks, vulnerable to the con because they grew up in an era of trust.
I believe when people look one in the eye and say something that they really mean it and that they're not lying.
She loved me so much. I guess that's what she wanted to make me think anyway. And I guess it was just because she knew what she could get from me.
So you would argue that even though these men gave the money to the women willingly, it was under false pretenses?
Absolutely. Generally what we're talking about is grand theft in these cases.
But what were the pretenses under which these men so willingly gave? And why were these women so believable?
Select families who have done this for years. They are experts at it.
The men describe tactics that are strikingly similar. Chance encounters with women insisting they had met before.
I got out of the car and went over, and she said, "Hi, Sam."
And she come up and give me a hug. Said she was glad to see me again.
All of the women talked about doing seamstress work at large hotels.
She said that they were working down in Las Vegas and redecorating.
And the cost of the materials, including the 3 sewing machines, was $42,000.
So then she started asking me for money to buy material. And by that time, I was thinking she was pretty good. You know, I liked her quite a bit.
They said money was needed for medical expenses.
Margaret claimed to be suffering from kidney stones.
Venus told you she needed $38,000 for an operation. You gave it to her.
Yes, I did.
And all the women teased with talk of marriage, but intimacy was out of the question.
I made attempts to get near to her, and I couldn't. She said her religion didn't allow anything at all until she was engaged.
I'm sorry, I can't kiss you on the lips before we're married. That'd be a sin.
She wouldn't even kiss me after the ceremony.
Did she talk about marrying you?
Yes, she did.
What did she say to you about that?
Save your money so we can get married.
But when the money ran out...
That was the last I heard from her. I never saw her again.
It hurt, to tell you the truth. It hurt me terribly. I never did find out where she was at.
You might think the 4 men were dating 4 different women, but it was really just 2 women, Venus and Lisa Loio, the Loios. They're just one of many large gypsy families scattered across the United States. You'll hear more about some of the other Loio family members later, and you'll see they have many faces and many aliases. When Venus Loio first introduced herself to Harry, she called herself Venus. But later, when she met Chuck, she was Margaret Dimitro.
Gypsies have the ability to change their identity as many times as you would change your suit.
Venus Loio has also been known to operate as Margaret Loio, Valerie Dimitro, Daffy Boys, and Venus Milo. That's right, all one and the same person. There are many faces, too, for Lisa Loio. She used that name when she met Mark and Sam. But she has more than 8 aliases, including Lisbeth DeVille, Tina Ingle, Lisa Marks, Bobby Mitlow, and Diane Taylor. Experts say they live transient lifestyles, moving from city to city, oftentimes frustrating investigators. But in our investigation, Dateline learned they do have home base. And wait till we find out how they got it.
So how does the scandal work? When we come back, we're going to show you how the scam works and the techniques they use. And later, one elderly person who works with Dateline with hidden cameras. Please stay with us. Returning to our story, you've met 4 elderly men who have been scammed by 2 different women. Remember, it's the same person who says she had 4 aliases. 4 elderly men that say they've been scammed by 4 different women, when in fact it was the same women. How is the trap set? Let's dig deeper. Once again, here's Chris Hansen.
In a 6-month Dateline investigation, we got a startling and detailed look at how experts and victims say the sweetheart swindle works. It's a highly organized scheme, and we're going to show you step by step, beginning with a chance encounter. It had only been 3 weeks since 78-year-old Sam Kaplan lost his wife Beverly when Lisa Loio approached Sam and told him she'd been his wife's nurse.
She went to a food market parking lot, calls you by name?
Yes.
She says, I was Beverly's nurse. How is she? You reveal that Beverly has died? It's almost as if these people were stalking you.
They must have been stalking me, having found out my name and maybe where I live.
These chance encounters, it turns out, sometimes start with a little research.
They will actually follow the person, see where he lives, see what kind of car he drives, to do what's called a little background on the subject.
It's possible this obituary provided all the background Lisa Loio needed to make Sam believe her. According to John Nicholas, it's the first step in a master plan.
And then they will try to set up a proper meeting, a chance meeting, if you will.
So to make it look like
it was a chance
they just
meeting.
happened into it.
Exactly.
And when all along, this thing has been scripted like a Broadway show.
Exactly right.
It's no coincidence that most elderly victims of financial abuse are frail, widowed, and lonely. And that's because the women pick their victims wisely. Authorities point to 85-year-old Gabriel Muheck. He was financially well off before he collapsed in a shopping center parking lot and was helped by this woman, Dorothy Miller. She is a member of another large gypsy family. Court documents allege that in a matter of 5 months, she ended up with $277,000 of his money and a new house. But she insists he wants her to have it all because she cares for him.
Do you have any understanding?
But when concerned family members took him to police, look what happened.
Do you remember putting Dorothy on any of your bank accounts?
At times, he didn't remember.
No, I don't remember.
Minutes later, he gave a different answer to the same question.
That Dorothy Miller was put on this home savings account. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I told him to put it there.
And when he is pressed, he's adamant that he gave her the money willingly. And he says she deserves
Does
it.
that bother you that her name is on an account that's got $50,000 in it?
What am I going to do with it? She helped me, damn it.
Okay.
And that's why I'm still here.
A doctor says Gabe shows symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And the videotape clearly shows one of the reasons why prosecutors are not pursuing criminal charges against Dorothy Miller. The very things that make Gabe a good victim make him a bad witness. And why is it so hard to stop them? Because they put it on paper.
Go out to the sunshine.
Remember Harry? If it weren't for a caring and determined neighbor, he would have lost everything.
Would you like to get outside?
Sylvia Tierney was Harry's conservator, and she quickly discovered that the Loios had positioned themselves well.
One day I found out that they had gotten onto the deed to his house. The next day I found out that he had taken out a second mortgage on his house. Then I had discovered that the car was missing.
Sylvia found that Venus was on the title to Harry's car as well as the deed to his house. And it didn't end there. Harry's house had been put on the market for $219,000 without his knowledge, and with Venus and her brother on the deed. If the house had sold, the Loio family would have scored big. When Harry was hospitalized after having a stroke, members of the Loio family came by to check on Harry and the property. This time it wasn't Venus who came calling, but her sister Bonnie and sister-in-law Lisa.
Lisa and Bonnie came to my door, wanted to know where Harry was, and they also became quite concerned with how the mortgage was being paid and who was going to pay the property taxes.
Why were they so concerned?
Because they stood to inherit everything. Their names were on the deed of the property, and they had written out a will.
So they're on Harry's will?
Yes.
Not just Venus, but her relatives.
Right. They were looking out for their assets. Right. And I wasn't going to let them get it. And I didn't.
She didn't. But eventually, Harry's house had to be sold to pay for his care. And just last month, Harry died in a nursing home. You may be asking yourself, how do they get the elderly men to sign all those documents? In Harry's case, Sylvia says he was duped into signing a deed, thinking it was paperwork for a loan. But in other cases, victims said they got them to do it with the promise. You remember Bonnie. She and Lisa were checking on Harry's property. Like her sisters, Bonnie has several aliases: Bonnie Ray, Bonnie Pay, Bonnie John, and Pat Midlow. And she used what appears to be a familiar Loio family tactic. Bonnie promised to care for 77-year-old Leo Kesty for the rest of his life, in return for his house. But when family members found him feeble and unkempt, with most of his personal possessions missing from his home, they sued, and his conservator took the unusual step of chaining down his television to prevent it from being taken. This is one case where the Loios lost. It went to civil court, which almost never happens, and the court ordered Bonnie Loio to return the house and repay thousands. Even now, she still owes the money. Because of that, you may be wondering why these cases aren't prosecuted criminally. The answer is they almost never are, because it's hard to prove the women obtained the money under false pretenses, and because typically the men were so willing to give. Why were they so willing? Maybe because of the promise. And the promise can pay off, like it did for Anna Loio, the matriarch of the Loio family. Anna owns 5 acres of valuable California real estate just 64 miles outside of Lake Tahoe, Nevada. It once belonged to an 85-year-old man who had purchased the property as a retirement investment, but a lawsuit alleges he signed it over to Anna because she made a promise of lifetime care. In the end, he sued for breach of contract, but died in a nursing home before he could get Anna off the deed. Anna's lawyer said Anna did assist him with his needs and confirmed she prevailed in keeping the property.
It's a mere fact that if the female is tutored enough to know what to look for, how to spot, and then how to proceed with a sweetheart swindle, again, all it is time, and usually the payoff is big.
And take a look at where Anna lives now. This spacious 3-bedroom home featuring a sculpture garden and pool in the backyard. And how'd she get it? 14 years ago, she promised this 81-year-old man lifetime care as well. He sold his home and bought this house for the two to share. According to a petition filed by the Public Guardian's Office, he fled because he was being mistreated. Even though Anna said she would care for him if he came back, he died in a nursing home. Once again, Anna got it on paper and kept it on paper. When he died, her name was on the deed. The house would be hers. It's this same house in Sacramento that serves as a home base for the Loios. And it was here that we saw Venus casually strolling with children, Lisa showing up for a visit, Bonnie outside with more children, and Anna, the matriarch, out front wearing a bathrobe. It appears to be a good life for the Loios. The promise works, experts say, because the carefully selected victims are in need of care and friendship, which is what this man, Tony Bruschka, thought he had in Venus Loio, a friend. Tony had already given Venus $118,000 when she said she needed emergency surgery. It wasn't long before she wanted more, and that's when Tony says she applied the pressure.
Said she was dying.
She got dizzy, she was falling, and they had to have $73,000 for the second operation. The last thing they said was, do you want to see the blood? Once they said, do you want to see the blood? I just ran out of that apartment, right to the stock exchange, and sold all my stock.
So like Harry and Chuck, Tony found a way to provide Venus with the money she pressured him to give. $73,000. He didn't even stop to think about it.
Maybe when you get older, you don't think of all those things, you know. You think of somebody's in trouble, you want to help them. But I never dreamed she would take all of it.
Venus promised to pay Tony back. She even signed this promissory note. But Tony says a year passed without any word or any money from Venus. Tony became angry and says he told this man, who he believed was Venus's brother, that he was going to the authorities.
I accused Steve of using her as bait so they can work these scams on senior citizens.
According to Tony, that's when things got worse. And this time he says it was Steve who was applying the pressure. Steve was really Venus's husband, not her brother. Their marriage linked the two gypsy families. And it was Steve and his mother, Tony says, who visited him with a disturbing story, that Venus had fled, and if he took legal action, she would never see her children again.
And they would bring the kids up also, and the kids said, are you going to arrest my mom?
The pressure is why Tony says he signed off on the loan.
They're going to pay me $20,000, no interest, and if I died, the promissory note would be canceled out.
But they owed you some $250,000.
That's right. The reason I signed that was because of the threat.
Just 3.5 months later, Dateline's hidden cameras captured the very same family on videotape as they appeared to be targeting an elderly gentleman. But what they didn't know is that he was working for us.
When we return, that hidden camera and that promissory note. Stay with us. Befriended and scammed. That's what these 4 elderly men are doing. How does it work? You're about to go into cover. Again, Chris Hansen.
They will try to befriend one, target one if you will, trying to develop it into a relationship where their ultimate aim is to gain monies and or property.
So we set up a controlled experiment to see what would happen. We asked a 78-year-old man named George to help us out. We gave him a history, a lonely widower with time on his hands and money to spend. And we sent him into this flower shop in Hayward, California. The shop is owned by Steve, the same Steve that Tony Bruschka says put the pressure on him. He met a young woman at the shop who told George her name is Rosie Perry. But when she and her cousin were arrested in May of 1995 in connection with the sweetheart swindle, she told police her name was Rosie Yanko. Her cousin was convicted of grand theft, but charges against Rosie were dropped. Rosie is Steve's sister, and Diana is their mother. She was friendly and invited George to visit again anytime he wanted to talk. He played along, as any lonely elderly man might do. He went to the flower shop often. He had lunch in the back of the shop. Rosie gave George flowers, hugs, and when they went out to a restaurant, the hard luck story of her life.
I have relatives and stuff. I go visit them. But I'm not to live with them. I'm not going to give them my problems. You know, they got nothing their own.
Yeah. Well,
Someone to be happy with.
She told George about medical bills she needed to pay, and a fiancé killed in a boating accident.
I'm over it now. It's been 4 years.
The next day, Rosie told George all she wanted was a companion, and a May-December relationship didn't concern her at all.
Don't bother me. But then I won't be your secretary. I'm happy to be with you. I'm not embarrassed or anything. I'm happy. Because there's nothing to be embarrassed about.
I'm not embarrassed.
And it's official.
She was telling George that they were a couple. She even talked about going to Hawaii with him.
When you're ready to go to Hawaii.
You want to go to Hawaii too?
And she told him she'd love to visit him in New York, where he said he lived.
I want to go shopping in New York. I want to eat in New York. I want to eat my heart out in New York.
So we decided to pick up the tab, and not just for Rosie. She told George she wanted her Aunt Diana to come along. But as you've seen, Diana is really Rosie's mom.
As I understand it, you wanted open booking, right?
Rosie told George to buy open tickets, saying she and Diana needed to be flexible. So we went along with it. But we wondered if there was another reason why someone would want open tickets. As you'll see later, there was. We also arranged for them to stay and visit with George in this New York City hotel, because we didn't want to ask George to use his home.
How are you?
Rosie and Diana left their room and had breakfast with George in his suite. Just 15 minutes into her visit, Rosie was giddy about her prospects in the big city.
Did you like it? What are you going to change? What are you going to do?
So as I find an apartment.
Yeah?
Oh, she's fat.
You're all ready.
I'll start looking for apartment today.
And that's not all. Rosie said she saw a perfect spot for her own flower shop, right in the heart of Manhattan.
Coming here. I said, looking out the car window, and she's looking, and then there was this store for rent. And then she goes, that would make a great shop. And I'm just looking at her, you know, what's wrong with her?
Is that a big front window? And then you can, decorate it real pretty.
And later that day, Rosie, who had been out only twice before with George, was bold enough to ask him to rent an apartment for her.
Or you find an apartment to rent it for me?
So, if I found an apartment, that's a price.
It sounded like an offer many lonely elderly men would find hard to resist. A 26-year-old woman implying that she was ready to move across the country to be with George and take care of him.
If I find an apartment, I'll love you, cook for you, do everything. Put your coffee. I don't mind anything. I'm not saying no, do it yourself. I'm not trying to say liberated woman.
But later that night over dinner, George told Rosie he wasn't feeling well, and we decided to cut the visit short because in reality, we weren't going to bankroll Rosie's plans. Watch what happens the next morning when Diana turned up the heat.
So how did dinner? It was lovely. And then boom, started pouring out tears. Straight to the bathroom. So she came out, and she lay on the bed, and she wouldn't stop crying.
Diana told George Rosie didn't want him to leave.
And evidently she found herself with a crush. And I don't think she doesn't know how to handle it.
And later, Rosie confesses her true feelings to George.
I'll put you straight right here.
Then Rosie cried as she told George she didn't want him to go.
Personally, I like to see it go.
But Rosie, as you may have guessed, could be crying crocodile tears. Maybe she's upset that the trip might be ending for the other people who were staying on our dime. Other people Rosie didn't tell George about. Listen as George asks Rosie about her flight from California. She told him she sat next to a stranger on the plane.
There was someone sitting next to us. And the seats, because there was like seatings, there was a stranger sitting next to us.
But Rosie was telling a lie. The man sitting next to her was no stranger. In fact, Dateline watched him leave California for New York with Rosie and Diana. He even stayed in their hotel room. The man who was with them was Steve. That's right, the same Steve who was married to Venus, the one who Tony Bruschka says put the pressure on him. But apparently Diana didn't want George to know that a man was with them, because she later gave Rosie instructions about what to say to George, and she spoke in the gypsy language of Romany, so he couldn't understand her. We asked Detective John Nicholas to translate for us.
She said in Gypsy Romany, "Don't think that there was a man with me. Tell him quietly." And then the young lady asked, what do you want me to tell him? And then she repeated, "Tell him that there was no one with me."
And Steve wasn't the only guest George didn't know he had. This woman met up with them at the airport in New York, and she also stayed in the room. 4 people in a room George had reserved for 2. And it turns out they pulled a fast one on George regarding the airline tickets as well. Remember, they specifically requested open tickets. Well, open tickets are expensive because you can change them or get a refund. And that's exactly what Rosie and Diana did. They got a refund for the tickets George sent them and traveled on cheaper tickets. They made nearly $3,000 on the switch. Possibly because George started asking questions, Rosie eventually admitted that they took the tickets to the airline for a refund.
We exchanged them. And they gave us a difference.
But Rosie lied again when she told George she'd accidentally left the refund checks at home.
I'm so excited. I left them on the dresser. I'm packing my stuff. Didn't even fold them.
At home on the dresser? Not a chance. This letter from the airline confirms that the tickets George bought were presented for a refund at the airport on August 14th, the same day Rosie, Diana, and Steve traveled to New York. Apparently $3,000 wasn't enough for Rosie, because before George left New York, she reminded him of how strapped she was for cash.
Because I had enough money just going home.
Yeah. And Diana wanted to make sure that George would pay for the hotel. She called him on the phone and sounded as if she was crying, telling George, "I'm so pressured, I don't know what we're going to do." But just a few hours after that phone call, Diana and Rosie looked like big spenders.
I should have that list.
We wondered if our $2,800 was burning a hole in their pockets as they danced their way through the Diamond District. And when Rosie and company left New York, they had a lot more with them than when they arrived. And despite the fact she promised to send George the money, so far George hasn't received a penny. We decided it was time to pay Rosie a visit. We caught up with her in front of the flower shop where she first met George.
Hi, Rosie. Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC. How are you today? Do you remember George? Do you remember George?
No.
The man you went to go visit in New York?
No.
Let me just show you this videotape. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Who is that woman with you?
What's my name?
Your aunt? What's her name?
Well, that's none of your business.
We asked Rosie if she told George the truth.
I did not lie to him.
You told him that you had traded in some airline tickets and that you left the money on the dresser.
I told him that, and I had sent it to him. But someone stole it.
Somebody stole it. Well, we have evidence here that you traded in the tickets and made $2,800.
Will you stop following me?
Well, I just want to get your side of the story here.
Well, that's none of your business, okay?
Rosie, members of your family have been accused of taking advantage of elderly men.
Would you go away from me?
Rosie hurried off and went to a payphone down the street. A few moments later, Steve arrived to pick her up. We tried to talk to Steve, but he sped away. And we had some questions for the Loio women, too. We wanted to ask about some of the elderly gentlemen in their past. We went to the Loio family home in Sacramento, where we caught up with Anna, the matriarch of the Loio family.
I'm Chris Hansen with Daylight NBC.
Uh-huh.
Why is it that you, two of your daughters, and a daughter-in-law are all named in suits alleging that you've taken advantage of elderly men?
Oh, come on now, get away from me. Don't start that.
What do you mean don't start that? What's going on? Why are you and your daughters named in suits?
Of what?
Well, like this man, Harry Champion. Do you know him?
Oh, get out of here. That's
know
my
him?
son-in-law. That's the liar right there.
What do you
That's
mean?
the Dimitro family, the liar.
The Dimitro family, one of your daughter's aliases is Dimitro.
Please.
Why all the aliases,
Talk to my
Anna?
lawyer. Talk to my lawyer.
Can't we talk to you for a minute?
Anna refused, and we left. But we still hadn't spoken with Venus, Bonnie, or Lisa. So we went to another house where Loio family members have been seen. And look who shows up. An elderly man on a bicycle. Naturally, we were curious, so we stopped and asked him some questions. His name is Louis Del Moro, and he's 78 years old. And guess what? He knows Bonnie Loio, too. She stopped him when he was riding his bike one day. It was a story we had heard before.
She stopped the car and told me that she knew me.
Had you ever seen her before that time?
No, not that I know of.
And it turns out Del Moro says he's given Bonnie money for medical expenses. The last time she came by, he said he didn't give her any.
I figured that maybe I was giving somebody money that I needed myself.
What will happen to Luis Del Moro, we don't know. But we do know that the sweetheart Swindle has left a trail of men much like him, broke and broken-hearted. Men angry that they were taken, anxious for someone to stop these women before they strike again.
After all she did to you, what do you think should happen to Venus?
Put her in jail.
Lock her up.
Yeah. So she can't do it to somebody else.
I would tell her that I hope they put her in jail for a long time and reduce the menace in our society.
Some final notes. 2 of the women, Lisa and Venus Loio, are currently under investigation. None of the swindles you've just seen resulted in a criminal conviction of any of the women involved. If you feel you or members of your family are being victimized, there are steps you can take. Contact your local police department and ask if they have an elder abuse unit. If police cannot help, ask if there's a local public guardian's office or a Department of Adult Protective Services.
Do those things and you won't get scammed. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Coming up next week on our next Saturday in our second look, no pass, no play. We did it for Flashback Friday, Throwback Thursday, but now we're going to take a second look. But now, on next week, a second look into no pass, no play, because a lot of coaches are giving players slack when it comes to grades. And really, like the old saying, if you don't pass your classes, you don't get to play your favorite sports or participate in any extracurricular activities. We'll change the terms. No pass, no play. Now, and I leave you now with one video from Brian Elcock.
HR is easy for everyone because everything works together. Time tracking flows into payroll.
Open this door. No, because you're going to whoop me. No, I'm not. I just want to talk. You promise? I promise. Okay. Psycho.
Look at me, I told you, it's...
More, I'm 18. I don't care if you was 50, you still my child. Can we not do this right now? Yes, no, let's do it.
That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break. Sorry. Alright. That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Saturday going into Sunday. We'll see you again for a special Give Me a Break Sunday Super Bowl 2025 with a Super Bowl 2025 second look. That's right, another second look tomorrow into the hotels of the Super Bowl. Dirty ones. Follow us to your YouTube and Give Me a Break. Stop bullying, speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Good night.